Welcome to Seat Time, where we drink beer and talk about all the happenings with motorcycles. Alright, welcome to Seat Time, everybody. Brian Pierce here, episode 60. I'm trying to bring in as much energy as possible. I'm feeling a little under the weather. I don't know if it was the trip to Germany. Maybe it was something that Jason Hooper gave me when we pushed our beds together. I'm not too sure, but the good thing is that we could talk about it tonight because Jason Hooper is my guest. Jason Hooper, how is your evening going, kind sir?
Hold on, let me get it started right.
Yeah! Woo!
There we go.
That's what I'm talking about. That's Diet Coke in there just for you ladies at home.
No.
Oh,
but it's the Coors Light. It's going good, man. It's going real good. Can't complain.
How's
I'm a
the
little
jet lag?
jet lagged, you know. It was a gnarly trip. 6 days, a lot of working, and we couldn't help ourselves but drink the beer, you know, the whole time we were there. So, you know, I think I'm paying the price a little bit now.
Yeah, I don't know if hydration was ever part of what we tried to accomplish, but I mean, there's water in beer, so I figured at some point in time our body had to be okay with it, right?
Yeah, that philosophy, I follow that too, and it never really works out. But yeah, that was the game plan we went with, and we made it out alive.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're here, we're talking about it, so it's a good time. So we could jump right in. ISDE, I have to say, that was my first trip to the ISDE. I know that was your first trip. I had a phenomenal time, not just because of the fact that I had good company. It turns out you're not that bad of a guy to hang out with. Who knew? But it was really neat to meet all the people we got to meet. Obviously, hanging out with you and Shan Moore, I learned so much kind of moving forward with just kind of learning, being a media guy, all that jazz. But what were some of the like your big takeaway points from the trip, you know, since it was your first ISDE as well?
The European dudes are way faster than I thought. That was probably, I got to see Juha and David Knight race the GNCCs, you know, up close and personal. And it's just different, you know. It's just, you don't get to see that raw speed because they're 3-hour races. And the speed that those guys go just boggles my mind. You know, we talked about this a lot while we're driving around. You know, like the first day was the last test. I remember Brownie was the first guy to hit that grass track. And I would have bet you $1,000 that there's no way you could go any faster than he went. And he got smoked. And I was like, so here's a guy that's an outdoor national champ, right? Works champ. One of the baddest dudes to ever throw a leg over a dirt bike. And these guys are beating him by a lot. And I think that was probably the biggest takeaway for me. It was like, those guys are bad dudes, and they deserve a lot of respect for sure.
It's funny that you mentioned that grass track. One of the things that I would love to be able to see, because when you're in those grass track situations, you're kind of like watching one guy hit this turn, and then you get to watch another guy hit that turn, or maybe the one right after it. So you're kind of like, oh, he might have gone just a hair bit faster, but even if he was a tenth of a second faster in that one turn, and he does that every turn, you know, it starts to accumulate and add up, and obviously they went faster the whole lap. So that's why, like, if we could find a way to like overlay, you know, like a time lapse of them going through that kind of a track,
so you can actually see where they were making
up that time, or maybe where their lines were different. You know what I mean? We should Google map the next ISDE. That's maybe that's the way we should go. But I think it would be. You're spot on. The way that those Europeans ride, I kind of known they've faster in this sense because they always do really well at the ISDE and a lot of the World Enduro Championships. There's not a lot of Americans that go over there, compete, and do phenomenal. But you're right. Having been able to be right next to them and listen to their bikes as they just spew dust all over the place, it was quite insane, and those guys can haul on a bike. So do you think that we should try to get a couple of them over for some GNCCs?
Well, I think it would be good to bring them onto our turf, because they're not going to just absolutely dominate straight away. You know, even Juha took a little time to get going, I think. Right. But I don't know. It depends on who you want to ask as a media guy. Yeah, I think it would be awesome. If I was a racer, I don't know if I'd be real pumped about it, you know. But, you know, it's tough because a lot of those guys, you know, they have that, like, you know, Aubert and Mbatan, all these guys that race GPs, so they're not afraid to, like, bang bars or anything like that. So, yeah, it would be interesting to see. I know, you know, I've heard rumors that, you know, Johnny Aubert wants to come over, that Matty Saistola, the Finnish guy, he wasn't there at the 6 days, but he's a World Enduro guy. Like, there's people that want to come, so it'd be pretty cool. it's always good to get a little international flavor, you know?
A little outside perspective almost. Well, okay. It's not only was this the first ISD that you and I have attended, but I think that for myself, this was kind of my first chance to, I guess, be in the pits and kind of be able to overhear, people talking about, how things have going, opposed to just like what they tell the media. You actually get to kind of hear some behind the scenes type stuff. That was really interesting, different kind of perspective. But what was your take on the American team? I mean, we could kind of talk a little bit about both. If all three teams, if you want, some of the club riders, all that, or just, what are your thoughts
on their performance, like how they did, or how they were in the pits, or what?
Yeah, no, I think so. Team America, USA this year, there was a lot of expectations because of how well Kurt Caselli did last year. Him winning the E2 class, so they were going to try to take that momentum. I think kind of make him the honorary team captain. They were bringing in Antti Kolonen, probably said that wrong, but as a team manager from KTM, they really wanted to put forward an effort. So I think, did we maybe jump the gun, going, "Ooh, they've put in this extra effort"? The way Kurt did, they're going to do it this year? Or should we have been more, hey, this is probably more of a building year. Next year might even be a building year. So with those expectations and how we know they did, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess hindsight's always 20/20, right? Having never been to a 6 days, before the 6 days started, I was one of those guys thinking, yeah, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be the best team we've ever had. They're going to go over there and they're going to do really, really well. Having gone and seen what we're up against, I don't really know if it matters what team we put together for this year. The end result was going to be the same, give or take a position or something. Nobody was going to beat the French guys. This Australian team was really, really tough, and the Italians were really good. So I mean, for a guy, like Charlie, it was being his first 6 days. He was killing it in the beginning, but he ran into some problems. So I think realistically, yes, there was too much expectations and too much pressure for that team, and I don't know if maybe some of the guys didn't ride to their capabilities because of that. I don't know. There was a lot of hype going into the race, and I think it was probably maybe a little bit too much after seeing what they were up against in a format that they're none of those guys are familiar with, and then terrain that guys like Kurt and Taylor and Destry never really get to ride. It was closer to some East Coast terrain, but the tests were the grass track stuff is stuff that our guys don't ever ride. On tires that they don't ever ride on. There's a lot of variables, man. For someone that has never been there, I didn't really completely understand it, and now I do, and now I understand why we've never won it.
Yeah.
It's hard. We're going over there and we're playing their game on their terrain with bikes set up and stuff like that. That's their deal. You got World Enduro guys that race. They're racing the same bikes they race every weekend with the same tires in the same format. Obviously the transfers and stuff, they don't do that at a World Enduro, but the special tests and stuff is exactly the same. It's going to be a tall order for us to put together an American team that can win. That's for sure. Yeah,
and one of the things that I took away from a post on Digital Off-Road today was the one with Andrew DeLong, and he made it very clear that he by no means wanted to jeopardize how he could do at the 6 days, thinking, oh, I need to stay healthy for my chance at an XC2 championship. But at the same time, he knows that is lingering in the back of his mind. So when this is something this is not, our team's job. Not that it is for the some of the European teams, but they're much closer to home. They're not going to, wind up coming home and have to get stuck in a cast and not be able to race and things like that. So I think for us to be able to say 2-3 years down the road, we need to have a team together that's going to do this. They almost need to be kind of together now, training, figuring that kind of stuff out, and then maybe having that off year so that they could concentrate on the ISTE. Would that ever actually happen? Probably not.
Probably not. But I mean, I think, kind of what you're talking about, Andrew and Thad, and these guys that are getting over there on the junior team, doing really, really well, is only going to help our chances down the line. You know what I mean? Now, imagine how well would Charlie Mullins have done if this was his fourth 6 days. If he had raced a bunch of them on the junior team and it wasn't such a new experience. I think it's good getting these guys, and I hope that's one of the things that happens with Auntie, running the team now, is that we can, the junior team is supposed to be a developmental team, right? That's the idea, it's like they develop these guys to make them, it's a little, maybe it's a little late for some of the other guys to have that winning team. Maybe it's going to take 5 years, maybe it's going to take 8 years, but maybe it's going to be, maybe DeLong will be on that team that finally ends up winning one. I don't really know, but I think if we can get guys like Thad and Andrew and Jesse and Travis and the Kailub Russells and all these younger, Stewart, I really wish he would have been there, and his little brother Grant, and Rich Lafferty's son, and all these kids that are super young but are freaking rippers. Like, we need to get those guys on the junior team ASAP. That's my thought.
Yeah,
that's much, because it's tough to have a rookie on a trophy team and expect them to perform. And to, because I don't think I don't think there's any way of understanding what you're in for unless you're there, for sure.
Yeah, and actually that's a very good point. And I think that with what you did this year, one of the things that you went over there to do was to cover the 6 days in your fashion. You wanted to do your videos of the 6 days. There have been coverage in the past, just not what you wanted to see in the way that you like to do it. So that's what you did this year. And then obviously it was way more than a hit. I think that you knew that it was going to do a good job, but it did, I would say, a phenomenal job numbers-wise, if you were to play the numbers game. But what I think as well that did is that gave a lot of insight to people that didn't have a clue what was going on over there. If you're in the off-road world, there are some people that haven't even heard of the ISDE and the 6 days and things like that. So with what you were able to do and the reach that you have with Digital Off-Road, and then just people that in the industry, I think that the knowledge now is going to be out there a little bit more, and that the support hopefully will be there as well, and that more people will be able to be involved and really maybe support the younger riders that you're saying to get into that junior team and then grow into a one hell of a kick-ass trophy team.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. That I went for selfish reasons, and I've always wanted to go, and I've wanted to go the last couple of years and wasn't able to make it happen, and I just wanted to see this stuff firsthand because I've heard about it for so long. I was lucky enough to work at Racer X and Racer Productions with Jeff Russell, who's won a bunch of gold medals. So I got to hear about it from him, and I spent some time with Randy Hawkins and Alan Rant and Mark Hyde and these guys, and I've heard some awesome stories about the 6 days, and I've always wanted to go and check it out. And it kind of bummed me out because it seemed like, back in the day, before we became like the motocross powerhouse of the world, and dominated the motocross the nations until this year, obviously, the ISD used to be kind of the thing, that people were kind of into it, and people paid attention to it in America, and that's kind of fallen off the map, and I don't know if I don't know how long it'll be before we get one back in America, but I wanted to go selfishly so I could be there and I could see it, but I also thought that people, from everything I've heard about it, people in America needed to see it in a different light maybe so that they can get pumped behind it, because the only thing, if you're just kind of the casual fan, the only thing you think about when 6 days is the poor riders asking you for money so they can pay for their trip, and I see why, because it's very expensive. It's an expensive endeavor for sure. But that shouldn't be the only news. The only news on websites about 6 days shouldn't be
somebody's donation party or I'm selling a T-shirt for $10.
Also, you need to understand how good those other guys are. I think because one, they need respect because the dudes are badass, just awesome riders, and it doesn't reflect poorly on our guys if they get fourth.
Fourth is by no means a bad job. It's just
people get disappointed about it. Because you want your guys to win or whatever, but these guys are really, really, really good, and it's tough. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. It seemed like the videos blew up way beyond my expectations. I didn't really know what I was getting into over there, but feels good. Work hard and people enjoy it. So hopefully get to go back next year and maybe do an even better job. So we'll see.
More awesome. One of the things that I took away that was so much fun was meeting Josh Strang and the Team Australia boys. We did get to hang out. We had a nice little 3-bed room. That was cool. I tried not to snuggle with Josh Strang in the middle of the night, but I was too tired to be completely honest. And you were in the way. That was no fun.
Yeah, I was the buffer.
He probably needed. But those the Australia boys were awesome. One of the things that I thought was phenomenal was Glenn Carney. That guy split open his knee. I believe I think I got the numbers right. It was 7 internal stitches and 13 external stitches. That's
Sounds right,
insane. Yeah. And he said that it kept opening up, kept riding because of the fact that if he were to drop out, everybody had to finish every day because he would have been the one score dropped out if he would have houred out. And so he was like, screw it, I'm just going to keep going. I mean, those are some, to use a cheesy word, those are some tough blokes. Like, whoa. I mean...
you got to give credit to everybody at the 6 days because it was pretty much the walking wounded by the time we got out of there. And that team is like the perfect example of like what it takes to have success, right? So Toby Price had like 3 cracked ribs from the first day.
Yeah.
Rode 6 days with that. I think Glenn split his knee open on the 3rd day.
3rd, yeah, I believe that's correct.
Right. And, I mean, you can overlay the picture onto this, can't you, or something? Because if
I know.
To understand,
for sure.
like, this was not just like a little cut. Like, this was insane. Yeah, it was the entire width of his knee, and you could see his kneecap. And for starters, he did it and rode 3 tests that day and finished. He knew his knee hurt, but didn't know how bad it was until he got back to the pits and took his pants off. And then he got stitches, then went back out and rode the rest of the week. And kept having to go back and get his knee fixed up because he was splitting it back open. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Any mere mortal would have been like, that's it, done. And no one would have thought twice because you would have looked at me like, yeah, dude, you shouldn't be riding a dirt bike right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's insane. You know, they actually used Glenn's score for the last day. You know,
man,
because and you see how important it ends up being. You know. Hollis crashed and broke his collarbone in the last moto, so they needed Glenn to be there. Otherwise, they would have only had 4 riders there, and they would have been in trouble if Glenn had dropped out and if Chris would have broken his collarbone. That could have been it. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy what those guys have to do just to sacrifice their bodies and do it for the good of the team. You know, we saw Charlie do the same thing with his shoulder. Unfortunately for the American team, he dropped 42 minutes of trail time or whatever on that day when that happened. But he didn't quit. You know, that's pretty much what it boils down to. Because if Charlie would have quit, then if there was any other problems on the team, then you're done. So it's
And then, I mean, even like we even had, Kirk Caselli first day had his crashes thinking he had a broken collarbone. We got Russell Bobbitt who had a couple, I think he had like some bobble crashes, but then unfortunately that was, wearing out on his injured wrist. So it's like, you're right. I mean, I didn't even think about it in the wounded warrior kind of fashion, but it really is. I mean, you got more guys limping around and hobbling by the end of that thing than you do, being able to ride them. Like they can ride a motorcycle better than they can walk pretty much.
Oh, it's just, you walk around in the morning and just look at everybody's faces and you're just like, no. After day 3, no one is having fun anymore. It's just, it's brutal. But yeah, you were talking about the Aussies. Everybody knows I'm friends with Strang and those guys, so I'm trying not to be too biased. But we talked a little earlier about kind of the vibe in the pits.
Yeah.
And there's no bigger difference between the Australian team and like the American team.
Yeah.
You go to the American team pits, and it was so serious. Everything was so serious, and then you go to the Aussies, and those guys, it was just the complete opposite. Toby's hobbling around like barely, almost crying because his ribs are hurting, but then he'll just start laughing and cutting a joke. And I think it kind of I think maybe that boils down to like the pressure and the expectations on that American team. Like I think everybody kind of felt it, and if they'll admit it, I don't know, but it seemed like it was kind of like that looming thing all week, was that this is supposed to be the team that does really well, and it got off to a bad start. And then it was like, Charlie looked like he was going to be the guy, and Taylor was stepping up, and then, after Kurt's first bad day, and then I think that has a lot to do with it too. The Aussies had a good start, even though Toby crashed as a team, they were doing really well, and that that relieves the pressure a little bit. With Kurt's the backbone of the American team, and he gets hurt early on. That kind of that kind of sets the end up setting the tone, I guess, for the trophy team, and it wasn't good.
Yeah, it was unfortunate to see that. I did get to meet Kirk Caselli, though. That was a big highlight for me. Everybody knows that I'm a big fan.
Now,
Yeah, maybe.
life's complete.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's totally complete, but at the same time, at least right now, I've got 2012 done. I could go to sleep and wake up 2013.
Father to son, and you met Kirk Caselli. It's like,
Shit has gone perfect this year. Okay, but before we move on, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's gone on with Kawasaki from what we understand it as of now. But before we do that, I do want to say thank you very much to Moto Tassinari. I'm repping their shirt right now. They're our sponsor of Seat Time. Can't thank them enough. If you want to add some more power to your bike, I'm going to come up with my own slogan. You should buy their product and that will do it. No, seriously, those guys do a lot of work to make sure that your engine is sucking it and blowing it as perfect as it can to make sure you're going faster. Okay? Yeah, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
MotoTassinari.com. Please go check them out. Thanks for your support on Seat Time. Okay, one of the things that did come across in the pits while we were at the ISDE, while talking to different Cowie riders and things like that, was that the possibility of the off-road team being dismantled. Now, rumor has it, through some more reliable sources of Destry Abbot's Facebook post and some other things that people have mentioned, that seems to be what has happened. I haven't seen an official statement from Kawasaki. Have you, Hoop?
the closest thing is there was an article on Cycle News with some quotes from Jason Smeagol confirming that it's going to happen. So it's a done deal. It's a bummer.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously that sucks. Now, my first thing is it just, at this point in time, is it just completely unprofessional and not cool to just not say anything? Like you were talking about, like with what Suzuki did in your article that you wrote. Suzuki just didn't say anything. Oh, okay, or official. And at this point in time, everybody knows, but there has been no official release. Is that just an unprofessional way to handle this situation, or is it okay just because it's dirt biking?
Man, yeah, I don't think it's a very professional way. It's obviously that they didn't make this decision overnight. This is something that's been coming. The writing was kind of on the wall. It seemed like, and from what I've heard now, I think those guys at the 6 days pretty well knew what was going on. They just weren't. They really couldn't say. That's kind of what I've heard from talking to a few people. So, this decision's been made for quite some time. And by the time, so it wasn't made official. It hasn't really been made official yet at all. But the news is all over the place. So yeah.
I think at this point that
it'd be a good idea to just put it out there because it'll end speculation. Because that's all that's going to happen now is everybody's going to wonder a bunch. What's going on? Is it because of Villopoto? Is it because of bike sales? Is it because they're in series that nobody's really paying attention to? I don't. And there's not going to be any clear answer. And the longer you let the message boards run wild and all that, then people are going to pick one story that's the best one and run with it, whether it's true or not. And then so if so say it isn't the Villopoto thing, but that's going to be the hot story for now because it kind of makes sense, right? Dude just held out forever, got a whole bunch of money, and then the off-road program's gone. Well, maybe it wasn't that. I don't know. But if they say it in a press release in 3 weeks from now, nobody's going to believe it.
Yeah, because then at that point they're just like, oh, we know what we don't want it to be, so we're going to say it's not that.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it is. You've been in the East Coast your whole life. You've raced in Loretta Lynn's, all that kind of stuff. You've been involved with GNCC, Race Productions, that for a very, very long time. I noticed that you have a really good memory as well. So that's why it's good that I wanted to talk to you about some of this kinds of stuff because you've seen and you can remember a lot of the teams that come and go and how they enter and exit. And, I mean, is this going to be the continuous thing? Do we think that, that there's going to be more Chad Reed type teams where they're going to find a way to get maybe just a little bit of privateer help, and it's like, hey, if we do really good, can we work our way to some factory support? How are we gonna move forward? How are off-road teams and off-road racing going to move forward if there is no factory support? I mean, obviously KTM's there right now, but where does it go?
Yeah, man, I don't really know. I mean, it seems to be kind of the trend right now on the East Coast. We have a couple of independently wealthy people that are into it, that are, wanting to start teams. It's unfortunate that that's what it's come to, but thank God those people are still around that have been able to make a decent living for themselves and still have a passion for the sport and want to put back. I think we kind of talked about this when we were on the trip. 10 years ago, off-road guys made a lot of money. Right. Made pretty good livings. But then, as the economy went down, the salary started going down, the number of rides went down, but the people still kept racing. So for a while there, maybe the guys were making this much, but now they're making this much, but they didn't quit. So then the factories have figured out, all right, we're cool. We're just going to keep paying you. We're going to keep paying you this. We're not going back to what you made in, 2002. Yeah. Because you're still going to race for us either way. And I think that's what's going to be the problem here too. Is the guys are still going to race. Some of these guys might still race Kawasaki's. We've already seen some press releases about it. Well, if you're still going to buy Cowies from them and race them in the same series that they were supporting you in, it gives them no incentive to support you. Yeah. Yeah. At least I'm not an expert on this stuff, but that's kind of the way I see it. It's like, oh yeah, Cowie, you paid me and gave me bikes for 10 years, and then you decided you're going to bail, and I'm going to keep buying your stuff and keep racing with it anyway. I don't know. Like, I think that's why you see like KTM's not going to go anywhere, because people are so, they're loyal, and the people are so loyal to them. Yeah.
No, I totally agree, man. There are people like you. There are people now that bleed orange when, say in the 80s and 90s and stuff, they would have bled one of the other four colors, But I think you see now more of a brand loyalty to KTM. And I am one of those people now that have transitioned. I was riding Yamahas for a really long time, and I was like, I'm going to try this. I've been having some issues. I'm going to try the whole KTM route, and I couldn't see trying another bike. Obviously, if I wanted to ride something, I could throw a leg over whatever, but I know where I'm going to put my money, and it's going to be towards the KTM, because I feel that they give back the most, just help and fun and good time. I'm kind of up in the air. Like I don't. It just is like like off-road guy. I think I want to believe that it was the Ryan Villapoto fault, but I don't think that he was like, you know what, I see an ability to rape Kawasaki for a lot of their money because I probably have a name that they can really use and want to have around. I don't think that that's the way it went down at all. Like, I'm not going to say it was Ryan Villapoto's fault. Now, maybe there was some of that to do with it because of the fact that Kawasaki was like, well, we want to keep him. We know what he's going to ask. We got to keep some money from somewhere. And so that was a really good place to put it. But as you stated, it was not an overnight decision. This is something that's probably been in the tank for a handful of months, if not more than 6. In the think tanks anyway. So.
Cowie's been kind of weird. Paul Whibley won the GNCCs in 2009 on a Kawasaki, and it was more or less a privateer deal. They had big contingency that year. I don't know if you remember, they had $10,000 to win a GNCC.
Jesus.
That's when David Knight came over and raced snowshoe on a Kawasaki. $20,000 in one day because it was a $10,000 snowshoe purse and $10,000 GNCC contingency. It was crazy.
Hell of a good day.
But anyway, I think it was like bikes and parts. I think it was pretty much all that Wibbs got. He wins the championship for them, and the next year they're like, sorry man, have at it. We're not gonna sponsor you.
Yeah.
Like, they had the number 1 plate. The dude won on a Kawasaki, and all they had to do was just give him some bikes and parts again, and he probably would have raced for him. But he ended up going and racing for Yamaha. So there's been some funny decisions made by them, and I don't know. My personal opinion, and this is based on no sort of fact except for just personal opinion, like, they put all their eggs in that works basket, and there's not much going on out there anymore. 6-8 guys showing up for a pro race. The amateur fields are nothing like what they used to be. There's no TV package. It's just not the series that it used to be. And poor Taylor Robert won the championship this year, and there really wasn't much coverage about it. There wasn't much fanfare. There wasn't much to do about it. And the dude's a badass, and I feel bad for him about that. But I feel like they focus so much on that, and there's no return on that right now. 8 years ago or something like that, the Work Series was way bigger, and if you put all your eggs over there, then maybe you're going to get a little bit more out of it. But right now there's only a few series that that are getting any sort of love. Endurocross, they're on TV. They've got to deal with the X Games. they've got some manufacturer support. I think the National Enduros are growing, and obviously the GNCCs are on track to have one of their biggest seasons ever during all this. And I feel like maybe they missed the boat. I don't know. That's my personal opinion. I'm very biased. I'm an East Coast guy. I work at the GNCCs and all that jazz. But, I can see from Kawasaki's perspective, it's like, all right, so we're going to go race works this year, and we're going to race ourselves. We have 3 guys in a 6 or 7-man field and no other factories racing. Does it make sense to send a semi and staff and all that stuff? And then when you figure, the last few races, everybody was on a Cowie except for Strang.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to what I was talking about before. If the guys are going to ride the bikes anyway, why do you need to pay them to do it?
Yep.
So, I don't know, man.
I think one of the deals, we also saw a little bit of flack about people saying, oh, it's not works, it's a bad year in the recessions. And, I kind of think we're on an upswing, and I think bike sales have probably picked up a little bit because of it. And the thing is, it's like, sure, there haven't been a lot of pros that have showed up to works, but as you stated, there hasn't been a lot of amateurs either. And the amateurs is what, in reality, is going to make a series last, because those are the guys that are bringing their families, those are the guys that are paying all the gate fees, those are the ones that are typically paying the pro purse. Those are the ones that are going to make a series money and make them be able to stay around. So,
right. I mean, because if you look, in my opinion, right now, the 2 most successful series in the country are the National Enduros and the GNCCs. How many of the National Enduros sold out in like 2 hours?
Yeah.
500 or 600 riders. People, like, the demand is there. And of course, there's 20 dudes that are pros, or 15 or 10 or whatever it ends up being. But there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of amateurs that are chomping at the bit to get there. The last GNCC, we had the biggest GNCC ever.
Yeah, that was a hell of a day you guys had.
But it's just, and I don't know. It's just, so you have it's probably the biggest off-road race in America ever. I mean, if it was the biggest GNCC ever, then Cowie has no support there, no representation.
Yeah, and neither does Suzuki, and really, there's.
And Suzuki missed the boat too, and they're crazy. And they were doing it on such a shoestring budget before, and they won a championship, and then they pulled out, which it was insane. But they had some serious issues going on over there at that time. With the whole racing program getting shipped over to Yosh and all that stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a tough deal, man. I think that all the guys that have rides should be really thankful, and then the guys that don't have rides next year, you just got 4 more dudes thrown into the pool that are good riders. You got Taylor Robert, Bobby Garrison, Justin Soule, and Destry, who all could possibly need rides next year. I know a lot of them said they're still going to ride Cowies, and I've heard through the rumor mill that Cowie might do a one-off effort to help Taylor race works next year or something like that. But either way, there's going to be some dudes looking for jobs in a market where there's not a whole lot of them left.
Yeah. That's definitely going to be an interesting time, and I hope for the best for all those guys. I just, last thing on it, I just hope that Cowie comes out and says anything. That would be, something official, and they do it quick, because that's just the best way to stop all the rumor mills, stop all the forum crap, and just, be honest about whatever it is that they need to be honest about. Before we move on to talking about a little bit of the GNCC racing, again, another sponsor of Sea Time, I have to say thank you.
How many sponsors do you have?
I don't know. Do you want to be a sponsor?
What's it cost?
No, we'll talk about that later, buddy.
Wait, you still owe me money. I might already be sponsoring this show.
So this sponsorship, this Seat Time episode is brought to you by DigitalOffRoad.com. I now know Jason Hooper. No, I will definitely pay you. But seriously, guys, DigitalOffRoad.com. Jason Hooper, the guy on the other side of the camera, he's the guy that runs all that stuff. Does a lot of stuff with the GNCC racing. Does the fly post-show racing that goes on all the time over there. You get yourself some good news. I don't know. You might even see yourself a Seat Time link. Whatever.
Go ahead.
Check them out.
Thank your real sponsor. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, whatever. But that's okay, because I got to say Fly Racing in there as well, because they're a good sponsor of DigitalOffRoad.com. So Fly Racing, they are at flyracing.com. Luckily enough, the URLs work out well for all of our sponsors. They're pretty awesome dudes. They make some of the sickest shit ever. What? You're going to say it? What? You just... Yeah.
They do.
That's good. I'm just saying. What's really neat for 2013, they came out with the Hyperlight gear. I think this is going to be some really neat stuff. There's none of the plastic crap that can get in the way and get caught on everything. It molds a lot better to sew some of your knee pads and all that kind of stuff. Maybe if you want to wear some plastic underneath your jersey, much better that way. Hoop needs another beer.
Yeah, I just asked for one.
Come on, woman. He's feeling sober over here. Help him out. But, so flyracing.com, thank you very much for your support. Dale Spangler, high five over the internet. You're a great dude. We appreciate it. Okay. Yes. So, moving forward, GNCC racing this coming up weekend. We got the Enduro crossover in Denver as well. But, Powerline Park, that is, you remember some of the craziest shit. I don't know how you do it, Hoop, but it's awesome. So, you're going to have all the scoop on all this crap. Whibley's coming back. Whibley's trying to win it. Andrew DeLong's trying to beat out Stewart Baylor Jr. on the XC2 side. I mean, you can't really, predict anything, but what do you think's going to go down if you were to not predict anything?
Well, so here's the deal. Coming into last year, Paul Whibley had won 3 Powerline Park GNCCs in a row.
Pretty good.
Then last year, Kailub won and waxed everyone. Killed it. All right. So there's a chance of rain. There's all sorts of variables out there. So Whibley rides really well there. Kailub rides well there. Thad got second there last year. I don't know if you remember. It was that crazy. Wibbs tried to pass him in the last turn.
Oh, yeah.
Blew into that tree, and it was insane. So Thad's riding some momentum. Had his first GNCC win. Killed it at the 6 days. But I know Kailub's not very happy. He's kind of losing the grip on this championship. I think he's 13 points behind right now. So I think it's gonna be a battle, man. I think it's gonna be a Kailub, Whibley, Thad Duvall, Charlie Mullins showdown, 4-way battle on the last lap.
Nice.
I don't know. I mean, it's a tough one to call. That track's got the big mud hole on the power line.
Yeah, and that always can suck up anybody.
Can happen there, and especially there's a chance of rain. Over the weekend, if that thing gets sloppy, that's all it can take is, one bad line there, one lap, and you're stuck for 30 seconds or a minute, or who knows. I remember a few years ago, it was 2009. Kailub won his first GNCC championship. He already had it wrapped up there. First lap, his mom points him a bad line. He buries her up to the rear fender. Just steps off the bike and is just sitting straight up. Doesn't fall over, just stuck there. He just walks off. And that was the first lap, and something like that happens and you're done.
Yeah.
So it'll be an interesting race, man. For the series and for the championship, it would be better if Kailub won. That'll tighten things back up again. If Whibley was able to get second, then we'd have an 8-point championship. But I'm sure Paul's not really hoping for that. So
right.
I was talking with Jason Wygand about this earlier in the week. We were working on a TV show, and pretty much every year someone has a bad race in the GNCCs. Last year Charlie was lucky enough to make it all the way until the next to last round at Loretta Lynn's when his bike blew up.
Right.
The year before that, Strang made it all the way until the Ironman. He had already had the championship wrapped up, and he blew his bike up at the Ironman. So, the championship was already over. But, historically, in the 13 rounds, somebody has a bad race. Whibbs hasn't had one yet. He's podiumed every single round. Kailub had his Florida race, which was awful. Yeah. So, we're going to play the odds here. Is Whibbs due? Is he due for a bad one? Is that what's going to take to tighten things back up? Or is he going to be the first guy that somehow... I was talking to Wygant, asking him if he knows, has anybody ever podiumed every single round of the series? And we couldn't think of anybody else that has, so it's pretty crazy, man.
I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I wish I could be there. I did. Do you know anything else? Have you talked to people about the possibility of any kind of live, not just live scoring, but a live internet broadcast?
Yeah. There's supposed to be a live webcast. And I don't know any details other than I've had to send someone a couple commercials for it. So I'm assuming there's going to be video. But this has never been done before. So
finally, people using the internet for the awesomeness that it is.
I just don't get mad if it doesn't work, because
right?
there's always that.
I will. I'm going to be the first person with some kind of blog post about it.
Yeah.
Because I have that ability to just...
Well, I didn't mean you. I just meant the fans in general, not to get mad about it. But they'll probably get the bug straightened out on the quad day, and it'll be good to go for the bike.
We can only hope. If it's going to screw up any day, right?
No comment.
Yeah. Well, then, do you think that Andrew DeLong has a shot, at overtaking Stewart Baylor Jr.? Because Stewart Baylor Jr. hasn't seen, even though he was extremely fast at the beginning of the year, he hasn't had as good of luck. Still had some wrist issues. DeLong's coming off of a good time at the ISDE.
Oh, do I think he does? For sure. And I think you can't forget Jason Thomas either.
Is he still close in the points?
DeLong is a pretty fierce dude. On the podium at Unadilla, he was talking about, when he started catching Jason Thomas and he smelled blood in the water. And he literally said it like that. He's like, once you smell blood in the water, you just can't stop. Like, the dude is intense. He's the nicest guy, the most unassuming dude you've ever met in your life. But when he puts the helmet on and, like, the green flag flies, I almost said something really bad there.
That would have been awesome.
The dude's gnarly, He's just so intense, and I think he's got a little bit of advantage over Stu. He's got a few years on him, so I don't think I think he's maybe just a little bit more mature, and he has a lot less pressure. He came into this season with an injury, and no one expected anything out of him. He missed the first 2 rounds, rode at Steel Creek, and got like 7th or 8th, and then got a podium at Big Buck, but he was 60 points behind before he even got to throw a leg over the bike. So I think those are things that are working in his favor. Stu, he was like we were already ready to give him the championship after like 5 races in.
Yeah,
it looked like it was over. This thing's done. Or 4 races, So and there's a lot of pressure on him. And not only does he have the XC2 championship, he's got the National Enduro Championship that he's battling for. So I think there's a lot less pressure on Andrew. And then Thomas, he's been so close so many times. He's been taken down to the wire on it. He's the veteran in this class. He's raced it forever. So I know people. It's easy to write him off in this championship, but he's right in the middle of it too. So. It's gonna be good, it's gonna go down to Loretta's for sure, and then, for Baylor, it'll be interesting to see if he doesn't have the National Enduro title wrapped up by then. He's gonna have to race on Saturday, and then the whole time he's out there at Loretta's,
go to Alabama on Sunday.
The National Enduro on the back of his mind. So I'm sure DeLong and Thomas are hoping he doesn't wrap that thing up early. They want him to be the least amount focused as possible coming into that last round. So
sweating it.
It'd be intense, dude. This is pretty cool. It's been a long time since I don't think in the history of since we've had XC2 if it's gone all the way down to the final round or not. It's for and the bike and the XC1 championships. We could have 2 champs crowned at the last round. It's been a while since then.
That would be really cool. Yeah, for sure. I'm just kidding, but seriously, I don't know. I think it's going to be a lot of good stuff. I've really had a lot of fun, kind of getting more involved with the GNCCs. Just I guess paying a lot more attention to it before. It was always just kind of like hearing how it went, checking up on it every now and again, and now I get the chance to really kind of dig in and really pay attention to it. And I don't have the memory that you do, but I still enjoy hearing all the news and getting to watching all the racing as it goes down. So I'm hoping that there is a live webcast. Please, fingers crossed, John Ayers make that happen.
God, he can do it.
Yeah, right. Hey. All right. Well, this has been Seat Time. I'm pretty sure that we've talked long enough that no one would even be paying attention anymore except for guys like us. So, there might be more of them, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yep.
It's your show.
Okay. Hey, man, that's okay. It's our show right now. Anybody who's on the show, it's just part of it. That's the way it goes down. Seat Time is just like an umbrella. We like to, harness and care for everyone. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's getting weird. Okay, so Seat Time. Seat Time is seattime.co is the website. That's where you find all the shenanigans online. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/seattime, and on Twitter. Twitter, it's @seattime_co. Those are all the fun little places that you can find us. Now, Hoop, what are all your fun little shenanigans for all the crap you do?
Well,
Or maybe you could just break it down into a
is
small
is the website. Facebook.com/digitaloffroad or @digitaloffroad. Those are all those. If you want to bug me about something personal, @JAHoop on Twitter.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Find them on the most public forum
Yeah,
possible.
Or you could email me, hoop@digitaloffroad.com.
Ooh, get an email. Now you get some straight up hate.
You can call me. Not
No,
really.
no.
Maybe.
I know. Call him a son of a bitch is what you can call him. Oh.
Come on, man. I'm trying to set you up. I said you could call me. Maybe.
Oh, damn it. I can't remember any of the words of that song, but man, that was stuck in my head the whole damn trip. Thanks to you and the I told you I have no memory. It's horrible. It's what it is. All right, so that was it. Episode 60.
Off-Road, Joe V.
I don't know who it is. Who is that? Tell us quickly.
Do you know Joe V? Joe Vatabancourt works for Trek Bikes.
Ooh, no, I don't. Should I?
You should.
All right, I'm gonna get in all up on that stuff. All right,
@JoeV3.
Oh, there we go. Another Twitter handle. Everybody get on it. We need you to talk to people and find out and make shit happen, okay? All right, I like it. Seat time. Always enjoy a pint full of awesome. J-Hoop, we really appreciate you being on the show. It's going to have to happen again, and we look forward to it. Make sure the post-race show you throw out some love to everybody who was cool.
Yeah. Will do.
All right,
Can't believe
dude,
it's taken you 60 fucking episodes to have me on.
Well, there it is. Now you're on. Seat time. It's a pint full of water tonight. So just, whatever happens, and it's recorded.
All right.
So keep your clothes on if you want them on. Don't if you don't.